I promise before I'm finished talking, you'll think I'm a quack, a nutcase, and a terrible person, and you'll be offended, and you might even want to burn your books. A Song of Ice and Fire, Central Mystery Roundup. I'm up to A Storm of Swords in my reread, and it's awesome. This might actually be the best book in the whole series. It's where it really kicks off, you know? I don't know if I'm going to publish this video, but I'm going to record it and then decide later. But my idea is, try to explain the answers to all the central mysteries that you've solved so far in less than an hour. Let's keep this under an hour, because each mystery I could spend like 8 hours on. A Song of Ice and Fire is an enormous subculture with a long 20 to 30 year history, something like that. It's the most successful story of its kind in our era, in our moment. And yeah, I'm kind of like a super nerd and tries to piece together the clues to the mysteries and solve them. Because I just enjoy it, I don't know. Everybody's got to have a hobby. And I wasn't actually expecting to succeed when I set out to do it, but eventually I did. Teaching the answers and why those are the answers and how I can be sure that those are the answers seems impossible. But anyway, yeah, I'm here to give away the answers, what I believe are the answers to a lot of the Song of Ice and Fire's mysteries and its symbolic mechanics and all that. Why? Because I've been sitting on them for too long. It's time for me to share them with the world, see what you guys think. And there's actually an injunction in the story for me to tell them. That's what Fly or Die is about. Bran Stark is the character that symbolizes the reader who solves the central mysteries. And his mentor figure, the Three-Eyed Crow, tells him to fly or die, that if he doesn't fly, he's going to die. And there's this big chapter where the whole chapter is a dream about this, basically, where he's falling. He sees the ice spikes below and that thousands of dreamers like him have died, have fallen and hit the ground before they learned how to fly. So that's what that's symbolizing, at least according to me. I'll let you be the judge. So yeah, there's an injunction in the story to share what you learn. If you're the one who learns it first or early. I don't know if I'm first, but I think I am. I haven't found anybody else who's figured this shit out. And George R. R. Martin expressed in an interview one time, at least one time, about one reader in 1,000 figuring out the answers to his mysteries and then like posting them online for everyone to see. And then everybody's going to act like they saw the patterns all along and knew the answer all along, and I guess it'd cheapen his endings. And so that's one of the things that made me not want to share the results of my research, I guess we'll call it. Because that is what I do with this story. I actually research it to find the answers to the questions I have about it. I think that's what you're meant to do. But yeah, considering that he's got the fly or die thing in there. So without further ado, let's answer some central mysteries. Probably the most central is Robert's Rebellion. But that's really like a dozen mysteries in one. You gotta break it down. There's Rhaegar and Lyanna. There's the Tourney of Harrhenhal. The Night of the Laughing Tree. The Tower of Joy. There's the Trident. What happened to the Trident? There's House Dayne. Like, what is House Dayne's involvement? That's kind of what I mean by central mysteries. It's all the stuff orbiting that era of Robert's Rebellion that threatens to recontextualize everything that happened afterward that we're reading about now. And recontextualization is basically Ice and Fire's most potent mode of surprising its readers. So let's begin. I promise before I'm finished talking, you'll think I'm a quack, a nutcase, and a terrible person, and you'll be offended, and you might even want to burn your books. Let's start with the biggest, most offensive one of all, Rhaegar and Lyanna. What happened between Rhaegar and Lyanna? Lyanna was a skin changer, and at the Tourney of Harrhenhal, she skin changed Rhaegar and won the tourney, and then crowned herself the Queen of Love and Beauty, hoping that she could force like a relationship between them. Regardless that Elio was there and he was already married and all that. And then Lyanna fled Harrenhal, I think with a group of friends, but I don't know who the friends were. But Arya's chapters in the Riverlands with Hot Pie and Gendry suggests that she fled Harrenhal, that Lyanna fled Harrenhal with friends. That's kind of what I'm researching right now in this Storm of Swords. One of the things. Arya is a huge symbol of Lyanna, so a lot of the things she does in the present day are symbolic or just directly the same as the things Lyanna did in history. So anyway, Lyanna fled Harrenhal into the Riverlands, and then Rhaegar and his friends came to find her to arrest her for skin changing him at Harrenhal. I don't know if it's against the law, but it probably should be. Body snatching the prince, that ought to be against the law. And he also needed to prove that she was a skin changer to settle all of the problems that she caused when she did that. All the political problems. Where Rhaegar can go, hey look, it wasn't me that crowned Lyanna. It was Lyanna that crowned Lyanna. She took my body. So anyway, Rhaegar and friends went out to arrest Lyanna. And before they could arrest her, she skin changed Rhaegar again and raped herself, pregnant. And probably ordered his friends to stand down. But yeah, so Lyanna skin changed into Rhaegar, raped Lyanna, and made herself pregnant. And that's what the Year of the False Spring is. That's why that year is called the Year of the False Spring. At least metatextually or authorially. It's a play on words, where the false spring is a change of seasons that seemed like the oncoming of spring, but it slipped back into winter again, which symbolically represents like a fake out end to the hard times, because winter represents hard times, summer represents the good times, and then so spring represents the transition from the hard times to the good times. And so a false spring is something that seems like it's going to be a transition from the hard times to the good times, but really is not. It's a fake out. So that's one meaning of the Year of the False Spring. Another meaning is the rape. The rape was a false spring because spring can also mean erection. So when Lyanna skin changed Rhaegar, Rhaegar's erection was not really Rhaegar's erection. It was Lyanna's erection. Or you could say Lyanna's spring. In other words, a false spring. And she raped herself pregnant with a baby, who the audience right now believes is Jon Snow, but it's really Aegon. I'll come back to that later. That's another one of the central mysteries. And then after the rape, Rhaegar got his body back and arrested her and carried her off and locked her up at the Tower of Joy. And because she's a skin changer, he needed 3 guards to guard her at all times, because any less is not enough to guard a skin changer. If you think about, since a skin changer can snatch someone's body, 2 guards would not be enough to guard her, because the guards need to sleep in turns. They can't stay awake 24/7. And so, while one is sleeping, she can body snatch the other one, kill the one who's sleeping, and then kill herself and return to her own body, and go free. So to guard a skin changer, you need 3 guards, and that's why there's 3 guards at the Tower of Joy. 3 Kingsguard: Arthur Dayne, Oswell Went, and Gerald Hightower. And the mystery of the Tower of Joy draws attention to the number 3 in various ways. And Gerald Hightower is one of them. Because originally, instead of Gerald Hightower, it was Rhaegar. He was there himself. But Rhaegar had to go. He had to go fight the Trident and visit his father, I think it was. So when Gerald showed up and said, hey, your father wants to talk to you, Gerald stayed and Rhaegar left, presumably on the orders of Rhaegar. And so the question is, why did Rhaegar feel like when the guards became 2, he needed to make it 3 again? And skin changing is the answer. 6 3 guards to guard a skin changer. I guess I skipped the Tourney of Harrhenhal. Let me run to the Knight of the Laughing Tree real quick. The Knight of the Laughing Tree was Ned Stark. It wasn't Lyanna. The way I know this, well, there's several ways. That's kind of how I know it's right. Is because it predicts things in the story that I didn't notice or didn't remember were there. Predictive power is like the ultimate coin of any sort of like scientific inquiry, which is basically what I'm doing. I'm just doing science on the story. Story science. I didn't know I was doing science until I learned the fundamental principles of science are the same as what I'm using to analyze the story. It's the idea that the simplest explanation tends to be the right one. In a word, it's parsimony. Then you can test your ideas, or in other words, perform experiments to see how good they are. Refine them and come up with better ideas and all that. So back to the laughing tree. Ned saw that the problem in the situation with the 3 squires bullying the Crannog man was with the squires' knights, because the knights didn't do their knightly duty to teach their squires honor. So that's why Ned set out to defeat them and win their armor and horses, and then use those as an incentive to motivate the knights to do their knightly duty to teach their squires honor. It wasn't about avenging Howland, though Howland probably certainly appreciated it. So anyway, yeah, back to the rape. One of the things that makes Lyanna's skin change rape of Rhaegar and herself so disturbing is that Rhaegar was gay. This is something that you can learn by gathering up basically all the information about Rhaegar and trying to find a theme in it, one common idea. And that's what it is. It's that Rhaegar was gay. He was full-on homosexual and not bisexual. He had no interest in women. He was married to Elia and he had children with her, but that's something that gay men are perfectly capable of doing without being sexually attracted to her. In fact, in this society, it's the best cover story in Westeros. And Lyanna didn't know that he was gay. She just wanted the prince. She's a teenage girl. But yeah, you could imagine for Rhaegar's gay lovers, who were the men with him at the time, who went to look for Lyanna. It was a horrible thing to watch their gay lover like suddenly just start raping this girl, and you don't know why. You don't understand that it's her body snatching him and raping herself. And he's like shouting at you to stand down or whatever, probably. It's a very twisted way to end the story. But I suspect that scene is what George R. R. Martin refers to as the dream of spring. Because that's the scene that has the quote-unquote spring, the erection. The hidden rape that's not a rape that is a rape. Like on one layer it is a rape, because it's one sexual organ, like forcefully taking another sexual organ, right? But on another level it's not a rape, because we assumed it was the man raping the woman, but it's actually the woman kind of like mind raping the man. But then you could say, well, mind rape isn't really rape, it's just body snatching. But then you could say, well, body snatching is kind of a bigger rape than rape. You're not just taking one organ, you're taking all of them. Like psychic domination. So those are kind of the 3 layers of the skin change rape. That makes it hard to even talk about it. And, well, of course the audience wouldn't see that coming, because we assume that wherever a man and a woman cohabit a scandal, that it was the man's fault. The man is at fault. So surprise, teenage girls like sex too. And when they're like spoiled, rotten, and rich and out of control. And then you give her this superpower to snatch the body of like anybody she wants. Well, who does she want the most? The same person that all the other teenage girls in the realm want the most. The prince. So she body snatches the prince. And gives herself his baby, basically. And that's Aegon. Aegon, or young Griff, his alias. Yeah, that's the son of Lyanna and Rhaegar. He's a true Targaryen and a true Stark, actually. Come to think of it. Now, he's not true born, because they weren't married. He's a bastard. But the fact that he's a bastard and that he's the son of Lyanna rather than Elia is something that the Baratheon Stark dynasty / conspiracy can never admit to without admitting to the rape, the skin change rape. And Varys knows that, and that's why Varys is vying for Aegon to be king. Because the ruling narrative that he's overthrowing by doing so is one that, because of the nature of its lie, cannot object without confessing to its own guilt, basically. Its own lies. So Varys' plan is to play Aegon as the trueborn son of Rhaegar and Elia, and just let the Baratheon Stark narrative that Rhaegar kidnapped and raped Lyanna stand. Jon Snow. Let's do Jon Snow. He's the son of Ned and Ashara, not Rhaegar and Lyanna. You see, at the Tourney of Harrhenhal, Ned and Ashara fell in love and got married under the Heart Tree and consummated the marriage. Probably like right there or nearby, I don't know. And that made Ashara Dayne pregnant. And Ned being a second son, he was free to marry for love. So that's what he was doing. Because it's the first son who's going to inherit the castle. He's the one who needs to do an arranged marriage, mostly. He's the son for which arranging a marriage is most important. It's important to arrange marriages for your other sons too, just in case, because they're the backups, they're the spares for the family, if the oldest son dies or has some tragedy. But that usually doesn't happen, and because it usually doesn't happen, the second son is freer than the first son to marry for love. And so that's what Ned did. He married Ashara for love. That's why there's a rumor that Ashara Dayne gave birth to a stillborn daughter. Because stillborn and daughter are both opposite to what Jon was when he was born. So it's the lie that best hides that Jon Snow is the son of Ashara Dayne and Ned. That also explains why Edric Dayne has been told stories about Jon Snow, that they had the same wet nurse or whatever it was. Or milk brothers, is the phrase. And why, based on Edric Dayne's comments, the Dayne family seems to want Edric Dayne to feel some sort of kinship with Jon Snow. The reason is because House Dayne knows that Jon Snow is a Dayne, and a trueborn one at that, because Ned and Ashara did marry before they conceived him. Through Jon Snow, House Dayne has a claim to Winterfell, and the Dayne leadership knows that. So that's why they're fostering this camaraderie, I guess, between their children by saying you had the same wet nurse, your milk brothers. House Dayne would love to inherit Winterfell through Jon Snow's line. And they're kind of hedging their bets because the ruling narrative now will not allow the secret of Jon Snow's parentage to come out. So by sowing those seeds, House Dayne is preparing for the potential possibility that in the future, Ned's narrative will be overthrown or fail, and the truth will come out. And then when it does, House Dayne will have a claim to Winterfell through Jon. This is another aspect of A Song of Ice and Fire that I could just talk forever about, but to give you the short version, the way the mysteries are structured depend a lot upon the audience overlooking or not taking seriously enough the politics of the setting, basically matters of succession. I mean, we can see in the story that there are characters as young as children, like the Walders, who they can rattle off the line of succession like that. They're constantly keeping track. So if in-story children can do it, why can't out-of-story adults do it? Why aren't we paying attention to succession? That's sort of one of the subtexts there. And so succession plays a big role in the answer to the mystery of Jon Snow's parentage. And of course that relates to the question of why Ned never told Catelyn that Jon Snow is not his son. It's because Jon Snow is his son. In fact, because Ned was already married to Ashara when he married Catelyn, Jon Snow is Ned Stark's only true-born son. All of Ned's children by Catelyn are bastards. And if the secret of Ned and Ashara's marriage ever got out, everyone would know that. They would know, oh, Robb Stark, Sansa Stark, Bran Stark, Arya Stark, Rickon Stark are all Snows, not Starks. And Jon Snow is the only Stark. He's Jon Stark. He's the rightful heir to Winterfell. And you can bet that House Dayne is going to champion that truth. They're going to let everyone know. Jon Snow is legitimate. He's a legitimate Stark. And that means all the other Stark children are bastards. And the Winterfell goes to Jon Stark Dayne. That also explains Jon Snow's Valyrian steel sword. He has Longclaw. And when he gets Longclaw, he can't feel happy about it. Or, it just doesn't feel right, you know? That's because that's not going to be Jon's last sword. His last sword is going to be House Dayne's sword. The Sword of the Morning. Or no, Dawn is the name of the sword. The title that comes with Dawn is the Sword of the Morning. So Jon Snow is really Jon Stark Dayne. So that's why Ned can't tell Catelyn who Jon Snow's mother was, and why when the servants in Winterfell start whispering that it's Ashara, Ned has them silenced pretty quickly. Because Jon's mother is Ashara. And then there are like little sprinklings of clues that Ashara is Jon's mother throughout the series. For example, Jon dreams of his mother, and she has the description of her eyes in the dream is the same as the description that I think Barristan gives of Ashara's eyes. He calls them laughing purple eyes, something like that. It's not verbatim the same, but it's like synonymous. What other central mysteries are there? The Tower of Joy! I think I know how that whole fight played out, pretty much in detail. Because I think it's symbolized in the Whispers chapter, Feast for Crows, Brienne 4, I want to say. It's Podrick Payne symbolizing Howland Reed, Brienne symbolizing Ned, and Nimble Dick Crab symbolizing the other 5 men on Ned's side who died. And Oathkeeper is symbolic of Ned's Valyrian steel sword, Ice. And Brienne's 3 opponents, Timian, Shagwell, and Pig, are symbolic of the 3 Kingsguard that Ned fights, the Tower of Joy. Gerald, Oswell, and Arthur Dayne. So let me see if I can remember the fight. So the fight is 7 versus 3. Ned brings 6 guys, making 7 total for his side. We'll call this the Rebel side, because at the time they were the Rebels. Versus 3 Kingsguard. We'll call this the Royalist side, because at the time they were fighting for the royalty, House Targaryen. So Ned and his gang show up, and there's a little back and forth, full of subtext, some sort of like shared understanding that both sides know. Whatever their dispute is, it cannot be solved with words. It needs to be fought out. And then one of the big questions that we should be asking about the Tower of Joy is, did Ned use ice at the Tower of Joy? Because ice is Valyrian steel, which means that it's super sharp, super lightweight, super fast, and unbreakable. And if you think about Ned's opponents, one of them has a sword just like that. Arthur Dayne has Dawn, which is also super sharp, super lightweight, super fast, and unbreakable. And so if you're Ned, and you know that one of your opponents has that sword, well, of course you would use your sword of the same qualities. How else are you gonna beat that sword? But also, if you're Ned, you're honorable, and you might not want to use your magic sword because it would be unfair to the other 2 opponents. So anyway, Ned did end up using his magic sword, Ice, and I think it was either provided by or he was persuaded by Howland Reed to use it, because the Howland Reed symbol, Podrick Payne, is who brings the magic sword to Brienne in her scene. And Ned's strategy with ice was a very dishonorable one. Ned's plan was to use ice, its unbreakability, to get one of the other two fighters whose swords are not unbreakable to break their sword against ice. So that means it's got to be either Gerald or Oswell. And between those two, Ned chose Gerald. And the reason he chose Gerald is because Gerald is stronger than Oswell. He's going to hit his sword harder against Ned's sword, increasing the likelihood that it'll break, that Gerald's sword will break against it. And another reason is that Gerald is older than Oswell. That means even though he's stronger, he's slower, which is what you want if you're Ned using ice, because ice is a big unwieldy sword, not very well suited for combat. It's for beheadings. But it's not as unsuited for combat as we might expect, because it is Valyrian steel. As big and unwieldy as it is, it's also lightweight compared to steel swords of the same size. So anyway, Gerald was the first Kingsguard to die in the fight. And the way he died was that he attacked Ned with his sword. Gerald's sword broke against ice. Then Ned killed him. And while Ned and Gerald were doing that, Ned's other 5 men, except Howland Reed, he's number 6, we'll get to him in a minute. Ned's other 5 men were tasked with just keeping the other 2 fighters off of him and Gerald. Because the plan was, I'm just going to get Gerald to break his sword so I can kill him. That'll bring their numbers down to 2, and I'll come meet you, and we'll fight the other 2 together. So, while Ned and Gerald were having their fight, Oswell and Arthur were fighting the other 5. Which seems like they're outnumbered and disadvantaged, which they were. But they were back to back. And that basically erased all of the advantage. Because the big problem of being outnumbered in a sword fight is that your back is exposed. You can't defend yourself. Your back, you know. But if you have at least one other ally, you can go back to back and cover each other's back. And that works. You can fight off a great number of foes that way if you're very good swordsmen, which Arthur and Oswell are. We can assume they're much better swordsmen than Ned's 5 cronies. It's like Theo Wool, Ethan Glover, I forget who else. There's 5 of them. And I'm not sure about this part, but I think it's right. Arthur's plan was he didn't want to kill anybody. He was trying to win without killing. And I think that's why Ned remembers him as the quote-unquote the most honorable, or one of the best knights he's ever known, or something like that. Oswell was not trying to win without killing. He was killing all of them. So in Oswell and Arthur's back-to-back standoff against Ned's 5 men, Oswell ended up killing all 5 of them, even though Arthur is the better swordsman, because Arthur was trying to win without killing, and Oswell wasn't. But after Oswell killed Ned's 5 guys, and Ned killed Gerald Hightower, Ned, Oswell, and Arthur came together to finish the fight. And these are the last 3 guys, except for Howland Reed. Howland Reed's task was not to fight at all, because he's a terrible fighter. His task was to go into the Tower of Joy and instruct Lyanna on how to help Ned win the fight. So Ned is now fighting 2 Kingsguard at once by himself. It's Arthur Dayne and Oswell Went. And because he's outnumbered, his back is exposed to one of them no matter which way he turns. And so he's basically guaranteed to lose. But just in the nick of time, Howland Reed makes it into the Tower of Joy. He slips past the fight, gets into the tower, goes probably to the top, I think is where Lyanna would be held, and instructs Lyanna, skin change, Oswell Went. And so Lyanna body snatches Oswell Went, and Arthur doesn't know what's happening. He knows she's a body snatcher, but he wasn't expecting her to jump in the fight this way. And as Oswell, Lyanna stabs Arthur Dayne and kills him. Surprise! And then Ned kills Oswell which probably hurts for Lyanna, but compared to the alternatives of being held to account for her skin change and rape of Rhaegar and basically sparking the whole war, the pain of dying in another man's body is preferable to that. And then she returns to her own body, and then she dies in her own body, giving birth to Aegon. And now Ned's got baby Aegon, and he's got to do something with it. This is a Targaryen baby, and I'm not sure yet what Ned did with it. Like, I know he sent it away. I just don't know how or with who or where. But I do know from just having read the Tyrion chapters in the Dance of Dragons that Aegon ended up living with Illyrio. So somehow Illyrio is involved in this. And Aegon, being the son of Lyanna, is why he has a temper tantrum when he loses at like Dragon Chess or whatever it's called, Savas. He loses a game of Savas with Tyrion, and then he like flips the board in anger or something. And he inherited Lyanna's temper. Or disagreeable temperament, let's say. But he inherited Rhaegar's looks. So he looks like Rhaegar, but he's got the personality of Lyanna. It's very like outgoing and confident, also like arrogant, kind of entitled, cocky, self-assured, things like that. And then clues that Aegon is the right age to be Lyanna's son are available the first time Tyrion sees Aegon. He thinks of him as being like younger than he looks or something. I don't know. I forget the details, but I'll throw it up on the screen so you can read it yourself. Yeah, Aegon is actually really the son of Rhaegar, and he's not a Blackfire. One of the popular theories in the audience, at least right now, and for as long as I've been in it, 10 or more years, is that Aegon is a Blackfire. And the way that I solved these mysteries was I basically identified the impulses driving all of the theories. Basically what all the theories have in common is the audience's collective impulses. And the main impulse is just female empowerment. There's an impulse to put women into positions of power and authority and leadership and all that, and heroism. Just categorically. Not because she would be the best person for the position, or she's qualified, or she has these qualities, or anything like that. Just because she's a woman. That's the impulse that's driving the insistence that the Knight of the Laughing Tree is Lyanna, that Daenerys is the hero of the story, that Lyanna is the mother of the hero of the story, as Jon Snow, and that this other boy who threatens Daenerys' claim to power, Aegon, is illegitimate. That way they remove the threat, and therefore preserve power for their female empowerment insert, Daenerys. So the whole story is a big trap for feminism, but I'm being kind of glib because you can't just call it feminism and stop there. You gotta ask, where did feminism come from? The Battle of the Trident. This one's like brand new. I just figured this one out like a week or two ago. At the Battle of the Trident, Rhaegar drowned to death. Because I think his feet were bound to his stirrups, and he couldn't stand up after his horse fell. So he drowned in like waist deep water. Very humiliating death. And that's why when Ned rode up on the scene, it like kind of cuts to black. There's this dramatic cut to black, as if he saw something or just missed something horrible that we're not supposed to know yet. It's that Rhaegar was drowning. The way I know that Rhaegar drowned at the Trident is because Dunk had a fight that mirrored the Trident fight. In Dunk and Egg, Dunk fights the Long Inch in a river. So it's a 1v1 fight, two men in a river. You couldn't mirror the Trident any more directly than that, hardly. What happens in Dunk's fight is that Dunk's horse takes a stray hit from his opponent's weapon, goes down in the water, and Dunk's foot is stuck in the stirrup, and he can't get it out. It seems like he's going to drown. But then Deus Ex Machina happens, which never fucking happens in this story. And so it stands out because of that. and his foot comes free, and he stands up, and then he ends up winning the fight. So using that as a template for what happened at the Trident, the mystery of the Trident, among other scenes, there are other scenes that symbolize the Trident that you can extract information from. That's how I know that Rhaegar drowned at the Trident, and that probably the way he drowned was that his foot was tied to or caught in his stirrups. So unlike Dunk, his foot did not come free. And the reason I think it was tied to his stirrups instead of just caught, like Dunk's, is because there's another thread in the mystery that needs to be accounted for, and it's that Aerys, for some reason, believes that the Martell Kingsguard, Lewin Martell, betrayed Rhaegar at the Trident. So the mystery there implicitly is, well, it's twofold. It's why does Aerys think that Lewin Martell betrayed Rhaegar at the Trident? And if he did betray him, how? And so when you assume that the answer to the first question is because he did betray him at the Trident, that's why Aerys thinks that. Now you just need the answer to the second question, which is how? Sir Duncan the Tall's struggle in the stirrups seems to suggest that it had something to do with Rhaegar's stirrups. And then Lewin Martell, being a close ally to Rhaegar, who was at the Trident, means that he might very well have been the person who helped Rhaegar armor and mount up for the fight. If he was, he had the opportunity to tie Rhaegar's feet to his stirrups, so that way when his horse fell over in the water, he would drown. Now I'm not sure that that's what happened at the Trident. I'm still tinkering with it, but that's what I have so far. Another Trident mirror that helped me out with this was Mance Rayder when he's attacking or being attacked by Stannis' army. Mance Rayder's horse also takes a hit and goes down. Then there's watery language, despite the fact that Mance was not anywhere in or near water. It says the steel tide washed over him. So back to Jon Snow for a minute. Jon Snow being a Stark and a Dayne and a Trueborn on both accounts, and the rightful heir to Winterfell and the rightful heir to Starfall, gives us some new meanings to the phrase ice and fire, where instead of meaning like dragons and ice zombies, or like Targaryens and Starks, or even like East and West, it means North and South. It means Winterfell and Starfall, North and Dorne, Ned and Ashara. That's all sort of coming together in Jon Snow, because he's sort of the union of all those things. And so Jon Snow is Azor Ahai, and his sword, Dawn, is Lightbringer, and that's why it's flaming in the myth. Dawn is a sword that glows. It's a glowing sword. A glowing sword and a flaming sword, what they have in common is that they emit light. I don't know who's going to get Longclaw. But yes, Jon will probably retire Longclaw, give it away to someone when he gets Dawn. What other mysteries are there? Oh, the Catspaw. Who sent the Catspaw to kill Bran? This one's interesting. It's actually not that hard. We're just terrible detectives. It was Cersei. There are two people who had both the motive and the opportunity to send the Catspaw to kill Bran. Jaime and Cersei. And we know from Jaime's thoughts in the later books that it wasn't Jaime. Cersei's thoughts don't show us that. And so it was Cersei. And Cersei's an interesting character because she is a textbook narcissist. And she has Jaime wrapped around her finger, completely manipulated and mind controlled, basically, with sex. And he's also her brother and her twin. So anyways, yeah, Cersei is a narcissist, and a lot of her emotions and stuff are performative. They're fake. And this kind of starts right away. At the beginning of the story, you see Cersei and Robert show up, and you don't know who they are yet, really. It's just the king and the queen to you. This is the first time reading it, right? And Robert wants to go visit an old flame, Lyanna, in the crypts to pay respects to her corpse. And Cersei makes a complaint, like, can't that wait? And then Jaime steps in to like console her, because Robert's going to do it anyway. And then we learn that Robert loved Lyanna and that he was going to marry Lyanna before she died. And that he would probably rather be married to Lyanna now than to Cersei if Lyanna were still alive. So based purely on that scene, it seems like Robert is the jerk who can't get over his infatuation with this dead girl. And he's perfectly willing to like publicly humiliate his wife just to pay his respects to the girl's crypt. So it's a scene that makes Robert look like the bad guy and Cersei look like the victim. But when you come back to this scene, having read the whole series and paid close attention to Cersei and learned that she lies with her emotions and all that, you might notice that the idea that Cersei is emotionally hurt by Robert visiting Lyanna's crypt makes no sense at all. The interpretation is just dead in the water. Let's think about this for a minute. By this point in the story, we don't know it yet, but Cersei has already cucked Robert 3 times with her brother, and the level of contempt that she has for Robert is so far beyond caring what he thinks about her or who he loves that Robert visiting Lyanna in the crypts could not have possibly hurt Cersei's feelings. The only thing it might have done is offend her ego. Because what are other people going to think when they see that he loves this dead girl more than me? Like, I don't care that he doesn't love me, but he's not allowed to let other people know that because I'm his queen, right? So that would have been Cersei's feelings, if anything. But yeah, just the amount and degree of betrayal that Cersei has already done to Robert before this scene completely invalidates any reading of it in which Cersei is like emotionally hurt by Robert's love for this dead girl, you know. But that's the way narcissists are. They'll lie with their emotions, and especially when they think other people are going to believe it. Looks credible. The mystery of who sent the Catspaw to murder Bran continues throughout the series with little clues and progressions, like fake outs and backtracks, and it eventually gets to a scene where we see in Jaime's memory a time when Jaime and Cersei were arguing about sending the Catspaw to kill Bran. And Jaime remembers Cersei condemning him for trying to murder Bran. And that seems to exonerate Cersei, because what kind of person would criticize someone else for doing what they themselves did? It wouldn't make sense. But in the mind of a narcissist, it does. They will absolutely accuse you of a crime that they literally themselves did and feel no remorse whatsoever. So this is one of the things that the audience, just the general public, do not understand. And the author is playing on it a lot to conceal the answers to his mystery regarding who sent the Catspaw. And then you can see how the audience being naive about narcissism in a woman also matches up with the other mysteries, where there's subversions of feminism, where you thought that the woman was the innocent and the victim and the hero, and surprise, she's the villain, in the cases of Daenerys and Lyanna. Well, I told you the ending to Lyanna's mysteries. A lot of the audience is still in denial that Daenerys is going to go bad, basically, turn into the villain. And see you at the finish line. There's really not much left to be said. All of the arguments about it have been had over and over again for many years now. They're sure going to owe David and Dan an apology when they realize that they're wrong, and that David and Dan were just doing what George R. Martin told them was the ending for Daenerys, in broad strokes at least. The details will be different. And then, of course, when the details are different, that's exactly what these narcissists are going to say. Anyway, there's a relatively quick roundup of what I consider the answers to about 20 years worth of mystery in A Song of Ice and Fire. the great American fantasist, George R. R. Martin. And if you're thinking, well, George would never end his story with a woman raping a man, I'll just remind you that the first story George ever told was when he was a child in school, and his teacher had him read the story in front of the class. And it was a story about a man who was tied down in a torture chamber or dungeon or something with a swinging blade over his neck. And the blade would swing left and right, and it would come down a little lower every swing. And the audience is on the edge of their seat wondering, how is the man going to get out of it? How is he going to be saved? The blade cuts through his neck, and there's bloody ribbons everywhere, and described in horrific detail. From the time he was a child, George R. R. Martin has apparently been taken with a feature of American audiences that causes us to ignore the obvious and to expect against all evidence that somehow there's going to be a happy ending.